Don't know how you want to.
It's your turn to go.
Okay. Well, in terms of does size matter at the BBC, it's a difficult question to answer. I think that I don't have a problem with the size the BBC is. I think it's big and it's strong and it provides lots of services that people value. And I think if you made it smaller, it would provide less that people liked. It would, and I think it provides good value for money, and it's a remarkable institution that's the envy of the world. So my priority is to discourage major, deep changes with it that might permanently damage it and mean that it isn't the institution it is. So I don't want to see a huge change in its scale, because I think that would be damaging. But specifically, that all institutions of that size, and this moves on to the question of people, all the salaried bureaucrats within the BBC. Obviously, any institution of that size, there's going to be waste. And large companies have waste. Even though large companies are totally incentivized only to make a profit, there will still be departments that are hemorrhaging cash that, despite the best efforts of scrutiny of the other departments, continue to hemorrhage cash. And so obviously there'll be people working for the BBC that aren't doing a good job, but how can we tell who they are without damaging the overall institution? I don't know. It's a sort of ongoing process. I do think that rhetorically this term, who earn more than the Prime Minister, is a little bit dangerous, because one of the weird things about our country is that, considering what an important job it is, we pay the Prime Minister an absolute pittance. And I must say, I think in general, while the expenses scandal has shown that some politicians have done dodgy things on the side, I think one of the reasons for that is that they are ridiculously underpaid, and we should stop comparing our politicians' salary to the salaries of nurses, because while a nurse is a great job, that we need a lot more nurses than we need politicians, and we need to pay politicians an amount of money that attracts good people. And the fact that senior executives of the BBC get paid more than the Prime Minister is more of a sign that the Prime Minister is paid too little than that the executives are paid too much, I'd say. The problem
I can't believe there's not just checking that it's
Thank you for queuing up my applause. I think one of the problems with scrutinising lots of institutions at the moment, and this comes to the subject of how much Whitehall costs, what that should be, is that because of the credit crunch and the recession at the moment, and because of the media response to that, we all hate money now, and the best way of an article making someone hate it is to quote a large sum of money associated with them. And one of the things I remember noticing, I think this was in the Daily Mail, it was in some tabloids, a reference to Shirley Williams, and referring to her £250,000 home. Now, as if the bitch. And so I think now £250,000, I believe that's above the average price for a home, but she is a very respected stateswoman who's been in the cabinet and stuff, and approaching the end of her life. I don't begrudge her a £250,000 home, and do you know what? I hope it's not in London, because it'll be a bedsit. What else was there? There was a regulation question, that was for you. And there's a question about teenage. So yes, obviously, that one of the things that the BBC is often criticised for targeting too much towards the sort of 16, I think it's called the 16 to 25 demographic, much sought after by advertisers. And, I don't know. The BBC should try and have programming targeted for every demographic, and teenagers are as important, but no more important than any other age group. But yes, certainly, if you reduce the BBC, that's one of the things that gets threatened. I do think there's some truth to the criticism of the media in general, and the BBC is part of this, for not sufficiently targeting things towards older people, which are a growing demographic in terms of numbers. But advertisers like them less, because they essentially are less susceptible to advertising. Whereas, sadly, people of your age group, and I'm sure you're the exception here, basically have their heads very easily turned by a new advert for ringtones or cheese string. I think that's done. Yeah.
Well, I think we should end it there. That was absolutely brilliant. Well, I don't know whether size matters. I don't really want to go, as I say, I think the key point that I've been trying to get across again and again is that I think that the BBC is an absolutely fantastic, super duper brilliant organisation, and the key to successful media in this country, it should simply be aware of its impact on its competitors, and it should leave space to have competition. How it does that is up to the BBC. And I welcomed its strategy review because I thought it was a clear example of the BBC listening to those concerns and choosing to act on them. Cynics might say that the BBC was playing a political game, was putting things up for, either putting popular things up so that there would be a public outcry about it and then being able to say, well, that's what happens when you try and scrutinise the BBC, or that its changes don't go far enough. But I don't think it's something for a politician to get involved in. It's a matter for the BBC, and I welcome David's U-turn in response to the question about spending less money, that actually you can spend less money and not have an impact on frontline services, which is a pretty fundamental point and will probably come up a lot during this general election. The key point about an independent regulator for the BBC, the debate, and I'm not saying what our specific policy is, the debate is whether you have an independent regulator, a separate independent regulator, or whether you have the BBC regulated by Ofcom. There are arguments in favour of both, but as I say, the key point, and actually it is worth remembering, I should have made this point perhaps earlier, the BBC is regulated by Ofcom in terms of its content. So if it does offend, I think the Jonathan Ross, Russell Brand stuff was all decided by Ofcom, and the BBC gets fined. So it already has an independent regulator. In that sense, and it's just about really an independent regulator for its services. And again, I just don't think you can have an argument where people simply say, well, the BBC Trust is doing a good job, so let's keep it that way. I think it's about having a principle that the regulator is separate from the organisation it regulates. And I can't think of any other institution in this country, private or public, where you would say it should be, the regulator should be part of that organisation. I just don't think it's good governance. Is the BBC better value for money than Whitehall? I mean, my view is, two wrongs don't make a right, as it were. I think the BBC should, we will all have debates about whether the BBC spends its money wisely. Some people are concerned about how much it's spent on its buildings, how much it spends on its bureaucrats. The idea that Whitehall could defend itself as being a value for money organisation is, I think, pretty impossible to defend, but I might ask David, because he's very good at these kind of arguments, to just, rather like just a minute. I want David Mitchell to do 1 minute on why Whitehall is value of money, because it would probably be very convincing. And I don't know anything, I'm afraid, about the BBC's teenage output. I have very young children, so I know a lot about CBeebies. I think CBeebies is the dominant medium in children's programming. That's another huge issue that we have to address. Not in terms of cutting back the BBC's product, but the fact that so much advertising restriction has been put on children's television on commercial programmes that there isn't enough UK-originated children's programming, and that is a real concern. At the moment, it's really, for me and my family, it's a choice between Milkshake and CBeebies, and maybe there should be a bit more diversity. But certainly I think Channel 4, Skins, I think I gather from reading the newspapers this weekend, is must-watch teen TV, I read some article. So clearly there's some good public service competition there. I don't know how well ITV is doing in the teenage market, but I'm all for big teenage product. And don't forget, of course, the BBC has Radio 1, which they tell me is essential listening for all teenagers. Is that right?
I think we have to finish that. I very much like to thank our two panellists, who I think showed you what fun politics is. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you very much. David will be signing his book outside, if you want.
If anybody, in the unlikely event anyone wants me to, I will do that. But don't feel the need.
And we have